Shank, I think you're on mute.
Yeah,
Okay,
all
yep.
set.
Greeting, welcome to the channel.
Okay, wonderful.
Yes, sir. So today's discussion, as we are aware, is going to be about Ramayana and
Mm-hmm.
more details of Ramayana that most people would not be aware of. So that is what we would want to discuss. And you are someone who is familiar with Ramayana, and so tell us what are those things that most people may not be aware of, but you would want to share with us.
Yeah, so hoping to have a fruitful conversation with you, and thank you for providing me with this platform, man. Thank you. So,
Thank you.
yeah, so let's get started with the basics. Ramayana, I believe that it is a part of Indian history. As we all know, most of the people believe that it is a part of history that has actually occurred. And let's start off with the whole purpose of Ramayana, as in why the entire battle took place and why Ram had to go through all of this struggle. So, contrary to popular belief, many people believe that it has happened because Ram's love for Sita is so deep that he was willing to cross the seven seas and he was willing to fight the the Asura Ravan. And yeah, I think that's one of the reasons, but the main reason being that um, Ram fought Ravana because he wanted to protect his kingdom's glory, and that was the main purpose. So Ravana had actually insulted the glory of the Ikshvaku kingdom. That's the entire dynasty, the uh, whole family of Ram, the entire legacy of Ram, and Dasharatha, and so on and so forth. He had insulted everyone by abducting the queen of the land. So that was the main reason why Ram had to go all the way to all these lengths to defeat Ravana and put an end to his wrath. So yeah, I think that's what most people don't know about, and yeah, they think that it's all because of the sole reason of love that he did all of this. And yeah, I think that is one of the reasons. And one more thing that people fail to
Wait, do we have connectivity issues at this point?
am I clear? Am I audible?
Yeah, now you are. Yeah, for a second we just went
uh,
blank.
yeah. So one more thing that people fail to comprehend about Ravan being that he's Vinash Kali Viprita Buddhi. Everyone knows that, but everyone thinks that he had literally 10 heads stacked beside each other, and that I think that's not really true here. What they're trying to depict here is that he had the intellect that's 10 times of a normal man. He had the greed that's 10 times of a normal man. Whatever qualities that he had, it's 10 times that of a normal man. So that is not literally that he has 10 heads. He could be doing one task and he had his head running towards 10 different places, and he had the capacity to do that. He was a mahagyani. He was an ascetic, and he was a prime worshipper of Lord Shiva, and at the same time, he did many atrocities. People paint Ravana as a grey character, as in he had so many good qualities, but due to one mistake, he had his life taken from him by Ram. That's not true. Ravan, he has been depicted as sort of like a villain in so many places, that it's not just one mistake that led to his demise. It's so many things that contributed towards him. And yeah, I think that's what people don't get about him. They paint him as a great character, and they have so many temples that have been put in his name. And yeah, Kite, are there? Yeah, you got
Internet.
disconnected.
Yep, sorry about that.
Yeah, no worries. So yeah, I was just describing about how Ravana is a great character, and he's actually not completely bad person. He had good qualities as well, but I think it's right to say that he's the sort of like the villain of the story, wherein it's not just one thing that led to his demise. It's so many things that are stacked on top of each other that led to his death at the hands of Ram. And let's also talk about how Ravana initiated the battle. He lit the spark towards his demise. Let's talk about that as well. Um, where this starts is with Shurpanaka. So I think that's where the chain of his entire storyline gets started. Um, as you know, Ram and Lakshman and Sita, when they went for their vanvas, they went and settled in Panchavati, that's near Nasik in today's geographical plane. And once they settled over there, Shurpanaka just stumbled upon their little hut, and she was just baffled by the handsomeness of Ram and Lakshman, and she wanted to approach them in a way that's not really appropriate, and she did that. And many a places, Ram and Lakshman's characters tarnished in a way that they were being playful with Shurpanaka, wherein Shurpanaka just approached Ram at first, and then he said that he's married, and then he told Shurpanaka to go to Lakshman, and then Lakshman told that no, he's not really able to marry as of now, and they just kept on rejecting her, and she got really angry at one point, and then she just thought that the reason why these two handsome young men are rejecting me is because Sita lives here, and then she just proceeded to attack Sita, and that's when Ram and Lakshman, the infamous nose cut happened, and Shurpanaka she just fled the place, and then she just went ahead and fled the whole place, and due to this embarrassment, she went to her cousin, that's Khara.
Mhm.
So here's where things take a turn. Khara is mentioned in many places, as in many scriptures, but there's also one more narrative to the story. There's one more variation to the story. In Valmiki Ramayana, it's mentioned that Khara is the cousin of Shurpanaka, and indirectly a cousin of Ravan as well. But in other Ramayanas, that is, it can be Ramcharitmanas, or it can be Kam Ramayana. She There's no mention of Khara at all. It's mentioned that Rama and Lakshmana, they just end up killing Shurpanaka's husband, because Shurpanaka, after her whole fight with Rama and Lakshmana happened, she just went and complained towards Khara. In this case, Valmiki Ramayana, Khara is mentioned, and Khara just came in and attacked these two people, Rama and Lakshmana. Rama and Lakshmana, being the fantastic warriors they both are, they just easily killed off Khara, and this reached towards Ravan by Shurpanaka. So Shurpanaka went all the way towards Ravana's, Sone ki Lanka. He went to that. Sorry, she went to his place, and she told that all of this has happened. And there's one more variation to this story as well. So, in one variation, it is told that Shurpanaka is the one that conveys this whole message about the fight with Khara that has happened, and Ravana gets enraged. And another variation of the story, wherein a soldier from the from the place where the fight has happened, a soldier flees from there, and he ends up going and telling Ravana, and that's where Ravana gets provoked, and he thinks that um, abducting Ram's beautiful wife Sita can really get him enraged, and it can really hurt him. He ends up taking that drastic step, and that's where the entire Ramayana gets sparked. So many
Wait,
play,
sorry,
so
one
many,
second. Sorry to interrupt.
yeah.
So, in this version of the Ramayana, uh,
Mhm.
Ravana is not kidnapped Lord, sorry, Goddess Sita because she because Lord Rama and Lakshmana cut off Surpanaka's nose, but more like there was a different issue, and uh, they kidnapped Goddess Sita for that particular purpose, not because she had an interest towards Lord Rama, and then he rejected, and then they thought because she thought because of Surpanaka is why that they rejected, both of them rejected her, and that was not the cause in
No,
this part of the story.
no, Shurpanaka was not the main issue here. So there are series of events that take place. So first of all, Shurpanaka being the main reason.
Mhm.
Her embarrassment and her nose being cut off. That's one reason. The second reason being that Ram and Ravan killed off Khara, who is an indirect cousin of Ravan and a direct cousin of Shurpanaka. So these are the things that led to Ravan taking that drastic step of kidnapping Sita, and that's where the entire spark turned into a fire.
So this Kara, I mean, which part of the story does Kara come under, and what is the scenario where he gets killed? Like, is he a Asura Rakshasa, or was there a battle? How did that fight happen?
Yeah, yeah. So Kara is an asur. So in one place he's depicted as an asur. In Valmiki Ramayana, he's depicted as an asur, right? So in
Mhm.
another place, there's no existence of Kara at all. As in, not speaking about Valmiki Ramayana in particular.
Mhm.
It may be other variations of Ramayana where Kara does not exist at all. There's one more storyline where Shurpanaka flees Ravana's kingdom and she gets married to a Danava. In this case, Danav and Asur. These two are two different species altogether. Um, Ravana does not approve of this, but seeing the plight of Shurpanaka, he goes and abducts Sita. And in this storyline, Valmiki Ramayana storyline that I'm talking about,
Mhm.
Khara is the cousin, as in um, not the direct cousin of Ravan. He is the son of the stepmother of Ravana. So as soon as Shurpanaka gets her nose cut off and gets embarrassed in Panchavati, this all happened in Nasik, by the way, Panchavati, Nasik, their initial place of resident. And after this all happened, she traveled for 2 days, and don't quote me on this on the exact time that she traveled. So yeah, approximately 2 days that she traveled, and she reached the kingdom of Kara, where Kara was a small ruler. He's not like a big time ruler. He's a small ruler, and
Mhm.
he gets enraged because it's his sister that got embarrassed, and he goes in personally and tries to fight with Rama and Lakshmana with a small army. It's not a huge army, but Rama and Lakshmana were able to handle this whole fight on their own, and at the end Khara just gets killed, and one of the soldiers get flees away from the scene, and that's where Ravana gets the message that all of this has happened. And
Okay.
yeah, one more
So,
variation you have seen in the 1990s animated movie, wherein Shurpanaka herself goes towards Ravana and tells that this whole thing has happened. So there's that storyline as well.
okay, that's nice. So, speaking of the battle with Kara, Lord Rama and Lakshmana had a battle. Uh,
Mhm.
let's talk about the weapons that they used. So, the popular understanding, I think the 1990 movie which you referred, right, which is a
Yeah,
Japanese-made movie, that is the
yeah.
only movie that actually had a proper representation of Ramayana, is what most people claim. Because all my life, Ramayana happened just at bows and arrows. There's nothing, no other weapons involved. That was my understanding for a very
Yeah.
long time. But in that particular animated series, there were different weapons which were displayed initially, right? Then I thought that
Hmm.
movie was wrong because, I mean, entire childhood, entire adulthood was pretty much like Lord Rama and Lakshmana carrying a bow and couple arrows. That's the whole agenda, right? I mean, there is no other weapons involved. But Valmiki Ramayana does mention different weapons which they were given to Lord Rama, correct?
Exactly. You're spot on with that. So you'd be surprised as to how advanced the technology was back in those days. And there are mentions of dry weapons and wet weapons, and there are mentions of vimanas as well. So these weapons were such that they could be activated by chanting mantras. So you can look at it sort of like just voice activated weapons, and you might chant a mantra in a certain way, and a power, an aspect of those weapons got activated. And these weapons were mainly based on elements of nature. So there was the Agni weapon, there was the water weapon, and the infamous Brahmastra, as everyone knows. And there's the Sudarshan Chakra that Vishnu yields, Vishnu, Krishna, all the same thing. So
Mhm.
many weapons, and so many weapons mentioned in Valmiki Ramayana, and the Vimanas as well. So many Vimanas. Pushpak Viman is just one Vimana that was named in Valmiki Ramayana that we know of. And it's not just one Vimana that Ravan had. Uh, Ravan sort of had like a parking lot of Vimanas outside his palace. That's what the depiction says. And the irony in the entire story being that the Asura army, Ravana's side of army, were so advanced with weaponry. They had so many advanced weapons, and advanced, not just small weapons, not just bows and arrows that are activated by mantras. They had so many launchable weapons as well, as in not missiles that I'm talking about. Uh, Weapons that could launch big, huge boulders at the opponent army. They had so many advanced weaponries, and the irony being that even with such an advantage, they still lost the battle against the Vanaras, who used practically sticks and stones and their bare hands to fight.
Oh,
So
that's
I think,
another thing I wanted to talk about as well.
yeah.
What were Vanara's weapons? Because I was going through Valmiki's Ramayana and I noticed the weapons were given to Lord Rama. And then I
Hmm.
also came the origin of Vanaras and what they would use. Both
Hmm.
are complete extremes, though. We're talking
Yeah,
about, as you mentioned,
completely.
advanced weapons, and they just
Mhm.
use nails by teeth and just they rip. There's this one particular. Let me just pull up the sarga though. So in this particular statement, they just say that they just rip off trees and start beating people up. That's how strong they were.
Exactly. And there's also depictions of Vanaras literally sitting on top of Asuras, twisting their heads and ripping it off. That's how strong and primal they were in their nature. And
Okay.
yeah, exactly like you mentioned, there are two complete extreme ends of this battle. One army having the strategic advantage wherein they can just literally wipe out the entire Vanara army by using their long range weapons. Again, this is just a case of not utilizing their strategic advantage at that time. They let the Vanara army get close to them. And again, Vanara army, Vanara literally means Vana Nara. Vana means forest, Nara means people. Forest dwelling people who fought with their bare hands and sticks and stones and whatever they could find, even trees. Huge gorillas used to rip out, not gorillas as in the literal gorillas, the people who were
Mhm.
big and strong. They literally ripped out trees and started beating the Asuras to a pulp, and that's how they ultimately won the battle.
The description of Vanara, I think this is in the first chapter, right?
Yeah.
Verse 30 to 20 talks about in detail like the strengths and the powers, how they were created, and all those things. And
Hmm.
it also talks about specifically Sugriva and Vali and their creation as well. It talks about, right? And
Yeah.
there are more Vanaras who are famous. Now, apart from Lord Hanuman, Sugriva and Vali, there are Angada
Hmm.
as well, and there are more.
Uh-huh.
Do you can you name some of them if you don't mind?
Yeah, the famous ones being Sugri, Vangad, Vali, and these are the known ones. And there are other Vanaras as well. But yeah, Angad being the son of Sugriv, I believe, if I'm not wrong. Don't quote me on that.
Vali, Nabisana Vali.
Ah, yeah, yeah. I'm sorry, my mistake. Yeah, and there are other. I'm not really, well versed with the names of the Vanaras. And also one more interesting take on the Vanaras. I read in the Valmiki Ramayana, Vanaras, their tail and their face is described as an abharan in Sanskrit. As in, we can't take the literal translation of abharan. Abharan means a jewelry. But an interesting take on this is that they had detachable things. You know how tribal people wear um, these feathers and they paint their face. Similarly, the forest dwelling people known as the Vanaras, they might have had tails that can be used as abharan that are detachable, and faces, masks that they wore as faces. And before the start of the battle with Ravana's army, Asura army, Ram even ordered the Vanaras not to take off their abharan. Abharan being the key word here. He ordered
Mm-hmm.
them not to take off their abharan in order to be able to differentiate between the opponent army and our army.
So
So,
let's
yeah,
park that for a second because this is gonna confuse. Actually, almost shook my belief system because I'm a big devotee of Lord Hanuman, right?
yeah,
And to me, the story goes, and this is how it is. Lord Hanuman, when he was in Lanka, his tail was lit on fire. It did not hurt him, but he could, he moved
mm-hmm,
his tail and he burnt Lanka down. Now,
mm-hmm,
the question comes in: if this was just an accessory or
mm-hmm,
like an outfit which they were wearing, how could he
mm-hmm,
control his tail? That's one question. Like, is that entire thing where his tail could grow? That was another, mention of Lord Hanuman as well, right? That's another question
mm-hmm,
which comes in. And there is another. I think I'm not sure if this is a part of a Purana or story. There is a
mm-hmm,
saying that Lord Hanuman is 11th avatar of sorry, is an avatar of 11th Rudra, which is Lord Shiva,
mm-hmm,
and when he wanted to serve Lord Vishnu, he took an
mm-hmm,
avatar of Hanuman. And since he's married and he chose to be a Karna Brahmachari over here, and his
mm-hmm,
wife, goddess Parvati, chose to be his tail to accompany him.
mm-hmm.
That's a story I heard. Like the question, the validity of that, if that is actually true or not, that's not something which I could argue at this point. I'm not fully sure on those things, but if
Yeah,
which is why which is also the statements that Hanuman's tail never really listens to Hanuman at all. It has its own will because that's goddess Parvati who is taken a form of a tail.
yeah. So coming to the first point of your question, Hanuman's, this literally questions the entire belief system that people have. We have Hanuman. We picture Hanuman in such a way that he's one with his entire body, and he's the owner of the Ashtavidyas, sorry, the Ashtasiddhis, and such a
Navadidis.
great, yeah, such a great human, such a great Vanara and devotee of Lord Ram, and that's why we relate to him so much. Even more than Ram, we relate to Hanuman because he is a devotee just like us. So yeah, one thing that can be argued here, we don't have proof about this, but there's one mention in in Ramayana wherein Ravana orders, as soon as Hanuman destroys the entirety of Ashok Vatika, and he gets captured by by the Asura army, and he's brought in front of Ravan. Ravan orders his army to light the tail of Hanuman. This is the infamous story that everyone knows, right? But
Correct.
what's quoted in the text is that he tells that the most important abharan of a Vanar is his tail. So that's why he decides to light it on fire. So I think
So
it's,
even here, they still describe it as an accessory and not as part of a body, more or less. In a way, you could interpret that as accessory.
yeah, I mean, it's different. If it's difficult to extract the literal meaning of the word abharan, as in what Valmiki meant by
Mhm.
saying abharan, he might have meant it in a way that it's the honor to have a tail as a vanara. It's a sign of respect, or he could have meant it in a way that it's sort of like an accessory that the forest dwelling vanaras use at the time of battle. So it's really hard to say that, but yeah, that is contrary to popular belief. I came across this whole thing and I wanted to bring it up as part of this discussion.
This is one thing that's going to, have a lot of questions raised at some point, though. Like people might wonder, like,
Yeah.
uh, never because no one's ever heard of these stories. I mean, we had a story which was given to us in a certain
Hmm.
way and to suit a
Uh-huh.
certain agenda, right? So we followed it blindly. And not, and here's another fun fact as well. Not many Hindus actually have read Ramayana, Mahabharata, or the Bhagavad Gita. That's another sad point as well, though, because uh, yeah, not many have read it. We've only heard of it, but we've never really read it.
Yeah, the people just have bits and pieces of what they've heard, what they've seen in movies, and what they've heard through propaganda by the government. Let's say propaganda proposed by the government to promote their own ideologies, bits and pieces from every single place. They've just heard it, they've clumped it all together, and whatever they've heard till now is just Ramayana according to them. And when you put across these sort of ideologies wherein it questions their entire reality and their entire belief system, it can really raise a lot of questions. Yeah, I do agree with that.
Hmm. So that's something new, though. I think there was a time I was listening to someone. Someone did mention this as well. The
Hmm.
abharna, as I mentioned, and which is nothing but an accessory, an outfit, and they also use that to argue that people, even today, tribal people wear feathers, just like what you mentioned, feathers, or they do wear certain animal ornaments. Uh,
Yeah.
that's the culture. Maybe the forest dwellers, the people of the forest, the Vanaras,
Hmm.
were of similar tribe. But for me, the problem with that particular statement, it shows that they are maybe, again, this is assumption, right? There is no actual proof. It kind of shows them
Yeah.
that they are not that advanced because they're out. If they're dressing up a certain way in a certain style, they might not
Hmm.
be that well versed or that well educated. That's one understanding you might go with. But there's also a statement when Lord Rama first met Hanuman, he
Hmm.
told Lakshmana that not a single word he said was a waste, which meaning that he seems to sound like a person who's well versed in all the Vedas and all the grammar, Vyakaran and everything, right?
Yeah.
So that goes against the notion that they might not be fully educated or might like they're just regular forest dwellers, because education has been shown such a way that Hanuman is, people always assume that he's just for strength and courage, but he's also someone who's known for his knowledge, which again most people would not know.
Yeah, I do agree with that. As in, here's what people don't actually know about the entire forest dwelling tribe. They think that Vanara means monkey, as in the modern translation. They just think that it's just monkey people. They just literally translate it to that. But these forest people, they were having fantastic knowledge. They were having fantastic knowledge about the Vedas, especially Hanuman. Hanuman being such a gyani, he was literally what do you say? The perfect brahmachari. He knew all the Vedas, the Upanishads, and the scriptures. He was so well versed in everything. And the first time that he saw Rama and Lakshmana, and he did not come out in his vanara in his natural uh, tribal form. He came out as a rishi muni, and each and every word that he spoke in front of them was pure Sanskrit. It was pure. It was the sign of a perfectly learned man, and he wanted to put it across in such a way that Rama and Lakshmana don't get freaked out when they see how they are in their tribal form. He wanted to make a good impression. So yeah, this is one take on that. They're really
Okay, I
not.
have two
Uh,
follow-up questions though. Yeah, sorry, I
yeah.
have two follow-up questions. First and foremost, let me be proud and open to, as a person who's from the region. I am from
Hmm.
Karnataka, and
Yes, me too.
Kishkinda, where Lord Hanuman is from, happens to be in
Hmm.
Hampi, which is also in Karnataka, right?
Yeah.
So that's something which I'll not just because I'm devotee, it's just a thing which I'm excited about, right? Like I'm from the same place as Lord Hanuman came from,
Oh,
right?
nice.
That's as exciting as it is. And now that is one thing. Like we're talking about a region, which is a region which we can still identify. Hampi does exist, and we have caves and everything over there. You spoke
Yeah.
about perfect language, and you spoke about Sanskrit. Now that pulls
Yeah.
up another area. There is this
Hmm.
age-long discussion: which one is the oldest language? What could be the oldest
Yeah.
language? Is there any accurate mention of what language was spoken in Valmiki's Ramayana by any chance? Like which language they used to communicate with?
Yeah. So there's two different styles of Sanskrit. So Sanskrit was the main language which it was written in. Pure Sanskrit at the time of Valmiki that was used to write the entire scripture of Ramayana. But when you look at Uttarakhand, that was the later part that was added. We'll get to the whole Uttarakhand part of the Ramayana later. But you can
Mm-hmm.
see a different style of Sanskrit, a modernized style of Sanskrit that's been written in Uttarakhand. Um, the entire first, the Balakanda, Ayodhya Kanda, Aranya Kanda, Kishkinda Kanda, Sundara Kanda, and Yuddha Kanda, which is supposed to be the last part of Ramayana, where the entire battle ends. This whole these parts have a consistent Sanskrit language within them. It's of the same style, it's of the same period, but in Uttarakhanda, it's suddenly a modernized, a later version of Sanskrit is being written. So there's no real proof as to which is the oldest language because after 5,000 years, even plastic decides to erode itself, right? It's really hard to
Mm-hmm.
say that after so many years, there's really no proof as to which is the oldest language. We have scriptures in Sanskrit which say that, which date back to 5,000 years. And if we're lucky to find more pieces of literature, that could be wonderful. But yeah, Sanskrit is the oldest written form of literature. But yeah, there are people who argue that Tamil is the oldest language in the world. And it 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 ultimately goes to the entire discussion of Aryans, how they originated, and how the entire world came into the whole civilization period. It's a whole thread of thought. So there's no written proof as to which is the oldest language in the world. So yeah,
Yeah. Yeah, first of all, I'm not a believer of the Aryan invasion theory. I think it's been debunked several
yeah,
times. So I am
yeah.
not a follower of that theory at all. And second, to me, yeah, all native languages of India originated from India. There is this
Mm-hmm,
YouTuber called Project Shivoham. Actually, I've done a
mm-hmm,
reaction kind of video for that. Especially that particular video, it kind of interested me. It
mm-hmm,
was kind of interesting to me because of the topic which he covered. So he essentially says that the language, all Indian languages,
mm-hmm.
comes from the Shiva Sutras.
Oh, okay, that's an interesting take.
So, yeah, so he lays out. He's actually well versed in Sanskrit as well. You could see the way he pronounces Sanskritam and all the other languages. If I'm not mistaken, he's from Andhra Pradesh, but he speaks multiple languages, right? And he breaks it down and he says all of these languages come from Shiva Sutras. Especially there are certain sounds, and he breaks it down from every single language. So after
Mm-hmm,
watching that particular video, my perception towards is it Tamil or Sanskrit started to change a bit, because even
mm-hmm,
if you have to assume one is older than another, both of these languages, for example, let's take Tamil for example. Tamil
mm-hmm.
is said to be founded by Sage Agastya, right?
Yeah,
Sage Agastya is mentioned in Ramayana, in Valmiki's Ramayana. Sage Agastya is mentioned, right?
yeah,
So Agastya was the son of Pulastya, who was Saptarishi, right?
yeah,
But the oldest Tamil literature goes around, I think the document is around 2,500 years or 3,000 years, somewhere around that period. We have that document. So if we are talking about perfect grammar, which Hanuman spoke, perfect language which
mm-hmm,
Hanuman spoke, and
mm-hmm,
which means the language had to evolve from one place to another place. It cannot be perfect during the time it was initially started. So even if I have to place Ramayana at 7,000 years,
mm-hmm.
at the duration of 7,000 years, it was already a perfect and a final language. And if another
Exactly.
language is mentioned, yeah, if
Mm-hmm,
another language, for example, Tamil is mentioned, and it's from the
mm-hmm.
same person who was mentioned, it could be maybe at the same time or post that, right? We still can't say pre, post, or during the same time because we don't have proof for it, right? But we can
Exactly. We
only
don't have written,
assume.
yeah,
Yes,
yeah.
sir. Go
We
ahead.
don't
Sorry.
have written, yeah. We don't have written proof on that exactly. That's the whole problem. But yeah, like you mentioned, the whole narrative where Hanuman is speaking a perfect language for a person in a forest dwelling area to be speaking a perfect language, it had to have been around for at least a minimum of a few hundred years, right? For a language to be that perfect and to reach such a rural area, I would have to agree with that.
And here's one more thing which caught my attention, though. It's not just they never mentioned that he was just perfect with the language. There was very
Hmm.
specific word which was used. He was an expert in vyakarana. Vyakarana is grammar,
Exactly.
and
Yeah.
that's it because even today, whatever language we speak, doesn't matter if it's a regional language or if it's a different language, we still make mistakes in vyakarana. We don't get our own grammars right, right? We make those
Yeah.
mistakes a lot. And when someone says he was an expert in grammar, and that
Hmm.
grammar itself in his language, I would say more than 50% would go towards grammar because of the nuance information that it carries. And those, if he was an expert in those, which only says that it was just wasn't a language, it was more at that point of time. As in, whatever language they spoke was more and just a regular communicative language.
Yeah, it was not just used for communication; it was used for much higher purpose. The whole concept where the main mantras in the Rig Veda, they were written by rishis. It was not written by one specific person. It was written by multiple rishis, and it is said that uh, these mantras just presented themselves to the rishis, as in they came to the rishis. Rishis did not come up with these mantras. For a mantra to be in Sanskrit and to have come towards a rishi so that he can interpret that and he can write it down on a piece of paper for people all around the world to chant that, I think it would have to be a much more ancient language and much more transcendental than what we humans speak. It would have to be coming by the gods, right? Such
Mhm.
great mantras.
Yeah, I agree. It must, even if you have to take the atheist perspective, and if it's not from the God, it still has to come from a far more advanced civilization at that point. Someone who had language and who mastered that language and reached language to its. Because people, even at today's standards, people still consider Sanskrit and Tamil, both of them to be a contemporary language and both of them be one of the perfect languages, right? So no
Yeah.
one's questioning the authenticity of these two languages. Meaning, if people even today agree that it's if not the perfect, close to be perfect than any other
Uh-huh.
languages or most languages out there, meaning that
Hmm.
at some point it was never, even though we know that it was corrupted and even though it was altered later on, we
Hmm.
still can trace back to it and say like, okay, these were somewhere perfect. At some point of time, they were perfect and they were altered.
Yeah, it can also be argued that, like you mentioned, instead of God, it can be a higher civilization. It can also be argued that God, the being that created all of us, they are
Mhm.
itself from a higher dimension that transcends our three-dimensional space. So it might have been these two languages. I'm not saying one or the other. It can be a gray area where we can all reach to a conclusion. These two languages can be given by that advanced civilization, and the mantras that the rishis wrote in the Rig Veda that have been compiled. It's such a great scripture. Uh, I don't think that it was just one or the other. It can be a gray area where both of these languages were passed down. Again, it's open for argument. It's not that there's one right answer for this.
Correct. There could even be multiple languages. For example, if you take Kannada language as well, right?
Yeah.
Again from Karnataka, we have Kannada as well. Kannada also is one of the most respected languages, and it's a contemporary language as well. And its
Hmm.
grammar in itself is way more different than any other languages out there as well. And it also holds a very special place. Almost all the South Indian languages have its own special places, but yeah, Kannada and Telugu both are predominantly strong as well. And we never know because the only argument we have is we don't have those manuscripts or any books, so we can't trace them back. So
Yeah.
since we can't trace them back, there is a possibility that could be multiple languages at that time, and we just might have found one or two which could be based on understanding the oldest. There could be several.
Yeah, we were just lucky enough to find the two languages which stood the test of time. As in, there might be other languages which have not stood the test of time and they have died out. For example, let's talk about other continents apart from India. Egypt has the entire the symbol language, right? I forgot the name for that. Hieroglyphics, I believe. Yeah, hieroglyphics. Yeah, that language entirely died out because it was not particularly feasible for the modern times. But Sanskrit, it's not a completely dying language. I mean, of course, there are people who practice Sanskrit and they read Sanskrit, but it's not a widely spoken language. It's not a spoken language per se. But Tamil is, I think, one of the greatest examples of how an older language can stand the test of time. So we're just lucky enough to find these two for ourselves.
Just a random thought. Do you think Sanskrit should be given a preference in a way if we at least understand that most of the Vedas are in Sanskritam and most of the literature work of religion is in Sanskrit as well. So do you think that Sanskrit, it's time to put Sanskrit right there where people need to pay attention to it, or do you think that no translation still work? We have other languages, we can translate from the other languages and spread that way.
Absolutely, I do agree that Sanskrit has to be given a preference, at most preference, because look at the advantages. You can understand the great scriptures that were written and passed down to us for not hundreds, not thousands, lakhs of thousands of years ago. These scriptures have been passed down and they're in Sanskrit. What a shame it would be if you're not able to derive a pure translation of them. Of course, there are people who can translate them, but uh, how great would it be if we can just understand it as it is? Just a few moments back, we both were struck in a conundrum where we could not actually derive the meaning of abharanam, as in, was it an attire, was it an accessory, or was it part of their entire um, skin? We were not able to derive that, right? That's the main
Right.
drawback of not preferring Sanskrit. So yeah, I do agree with that.
Nice. Yeah, maybe so I've noticed people taking the third language or second language because we have the option to choose, right? Back when I was in college, we had people choose, and most chose French, German, right? Uh,
Yeah.
Even I didn't choose. I chose Kannada second language, and Hindi was my third language, so more or less. So I never chose Sanskrit either. Uh, but yeah, maybe if you bring it from the primary education, maybe the scope, like you mentioned, there was this. I think there was a discussion of few people who were having this thought. Someone mentioned most of our knowledge is hidden in Sanskrit since we can't translate them. They remain lost. So the second we are able
Exactly.
to identify them, we should be in a better position, is what people argued. And how much of that is true or false? Yeah, that's yet to be seen.
Yeah, I believe that Sanskrit and mathematics, I believe that they are the language of the universe. As in, if we understand these two languages, mathematics, I'm purposely stating that as a language, as a method of understanding the universe. If we can completely understand these two things, I think we can just transcend our knowledge as to how the entire universe works. Uh, how it's stated in the Bhagavatam, the 14 lokas stacked on top of each other, and the whole theory. We can just understand everything that's been passed down to us through the scriptures. So that's, I think, so awesome by understanding Sanskrit. So yeah, that's just my opinion.
Nice. Yeah, I also agree that in that way. Yeah, we may need to dwell more into the language. We have several languages, and it's time we paid attention to these languages. Even if you don't want to specify Sanskrit or any one language, even if you don't really want to identify what's the oldest language, we still have a responsibility as well as a duty. I would call it a dharma for us to protect the existing languages and not let it die because we chose a foreign language. The irony is that I'm actually saying this in English, but then yeah, it is what it is, I guess. Right.
Yeah, English is just, we're forced to reach a wider audience. English is the more generalized language. And I think, yeah, our dharma is to protect our languages. And the irony is that we're speaking in English. But yeah, situation calls for it, so we have to do it. And yeah, understanding all of these languages, look at all of the opportunities that we have. Understanding Sanskrit can also lead to understanding different cultures as well. As in, we're not sure as to which languages other cultures are interpreted in, but you also are aware of the fact that other countries also followed Sanatan Dharma. I'm not talking about Hinduism, I'm talking about
Mhm.
the Sanatan Dharma as a whole. I've got a few examples here. We have such striking similarities with other cultures. It almost makes you question wherein were we the only ones who were following the Sanatan Dharma, or did the gods actually reach out to these civilizations in a way, um, uh, tap into their entire ecosystem and give this knowledge to them as well, like they did to us. So for example, in the Japanese culture we have Ganesha in our culture and Kangitan. The same qualities
Mhm.
Kangitan has are similar to Ganesh. Elephant head and a humane body and a humanoid looking appearance. And Lakshmi for us is Kichijotan in China. And Kartikeyan, the son of Lord Shiva and Parvati, is Skanda in the Japanese culture. And look at Indra, the king of gods in our culture, is Zeus in the Greek mythology, and is Thor in the Norse mythology, and is Taishakuten in Japanese mythology. Again, mythology is just a term. It might have happened, it might not have happened in other cultures, but surely they do have striking similarities
Sadly,
with our own.
sadly, they aren't here to defend it, though. So that's another thing. Western religions have called even Hinduism as a mythology, more or less, and we also have to put the Romans, the Greeks, everywhere in the same place because they're not going to defend it either at this point. So
Yeah,
that's the sad part.
exactly.
Yeah. Then, take for example, even though we call it Itihasa, which is Ramayana, Mahabharata falls on Itihasa, we still
Uh-huh.
have popular religions addressing it as mythology and not a history. Though Itihasa means history, as it happened, as thus happened. So we still call it as mythology. And our Indians or Hindus per se, they don't make an effort to change that notion. We still go by stating it as a mythology, and we don't call it itihasa as well, more or less, right?
Yeah, if you Google Ramayana and Mahabharata, they're listed as epics. Epic literally translates to it might have happened or it might not have happened. It might be true or might not be true.
Hmm.
Considering that it's the two books, the two greatest scriptures, are classified as might have happened or might not have happened, just tells you the belief system that people have, and many people are not ready to accept that it is a part of our rich heritage, our rich culture. Itihasa, it has happened like this. Many people don't believe that to be true, and I find that kind of it's their choice that they don't believe that this everything that's been stated here has happened. But again, they're just subjected to their own opinion at this point. We can't really force them to accept it, as in whatever we accept we just have to celebrate it. And I believe that it's a part of our rich heritage and our rich history.
Yep. Yeah, I agree with that though. So you was talking about Kartikeya addressed as Skanda, but Skanda is also the term that we use. Right? We have Skanda Purana,
Yeah,
and in Tamil he's also addressed as Kanda. Skanda, Kanda. I think they are just
yeah,
terms used.
exactly. They're the same interpretations. It just goes to show how widespread this entire concept of the Sanatan Dharma was, and the same gods. For example, Lakshmi is also worshipped in China, and Lakshmi also has the same instrument in the Chinese culture as well. And she's also worshipped for prosperity and wealth. And Saraswati is also worshipped in the Japanese culture. And Yama, the god of death, in Japan is known as Emma 10. See the striking similarity with the names as well. Emma 10, the literal translation being Mahakal. So the person
Mhm.
who brings death. So the striking similarities, and Narayan being in Thailand. in Narayan referred as Franarai. The striking similarities with the names as well. It makes you question if Bharat, India, was the only continent that was the subcontinent that was entirely affected by the same gods, or was it the entire world that was affected, the entire civilized world at that time that was affected by this culture, and they just throughout the course of time they just gradually reduced the celebration of this culture, and at one point it died out all altogether, and Buddhism just got popularized, and then the rise of Christianity, Islamism, and the whole Abrahamic religions came into place. That's where I think our Sanatan Dharma just took a toll, and it really went down in popularity after these Abrahamic religions came into place.
Got it. So you mentioned about Narayana initially, right? So there was
Yeah.
this book called Mahakathas. This one, there is, I think, the first epic, first story they mention is
Mm-hmm.
the origin of humans as well as the world, the
Mm-hmm.
universe. Sorry, and it goes on saying, as in the author says, is that in the beginning there was nothing. There was just Parabrahman, who's the
Mm-hmm.
ultimate, is the formless, the no beginning, no end. And then
Uh-huh.
he talks about how he manifested, the Parabrahman manifests itself as a divine entity who would lay
Okay.
on the waters like a lily pad over a pond. Since water is called Nara and a
Mm-hmm.
boat is called Ayana, the
Mm-hmm.
entity acquired is named Narayana. So the Narayana is nothing but the entity on water aboard entity is called Narayana. And then it
Yeah.
goes on stating that Narayana then took a form into the what do you call that, the universe, as Vishnu,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the
right?
Kshirodaksha Vishnu and the Garbhodaksha Vishnu, and there's one more form of Vishnu. These are just classifications. Funny you should mention that.
Hmm.
I just came across. See, there's this difference of opinion here. The Shiva Puran states that Shiva was the first being in existence. At the first, at the start of the universe, there was nothing. And then there was a ling, a Shivaling that came into existence. Anadi and Anant, being that there's the literal translation being there's no start and there's no end. And after this Shivaling came into existence, it was just burning. It was a burning hot ling that came into existence, and then Narayana, being Vishnu, and Brahma, these two gained consciousness. These two came into existence through Shiva. This is listed in Shiv Purana, and then you know the whole story where Vishnu and Brahma they
Yeah,
try to figure out what this entire entity is, and Brahma takes the form of a swan, and he goes up, and Vishnu takes the form of Varaha, that is a pig, and he
boar.
tries to go, yeah, a boar. I'm sorry, a
Yes.
boar, and he goes down, and they both are unable to figure out the end and the start of this entire Shivling, and that's listed in Shiv Puran. And come to Vishnu Puran. Vishnu Puran states that there was nothing at the start of the universe, and Vishnu came into existence, and through his navel came a lotus,
Brahman.
and out of that lotus came Brahma, and Shiva came into existence as well simultaneously. Shiva being the destroyer, Narayana being the maintainer, the preserver of the entire universe, and Brahma being the creator of the universe. So there's this whole difference of opinion amongst Purans, and you don't really know which one to consider and which one to be true. So I think it's safe to say that the whole concept of Brahman, you're aware of the entire concept of Brahman, where the
Yes, sir.
supreme soul and
Mhm.
yeah, the Parabrahman and the Brahman and the supreme soul being at the start of the universe, and us just amshas or part of that supreme soul, and once we perish and our entire life cycle ends, and we're free from this whole karmic cycle, we just go ahead and become one with the Parabrahma. So there's one more concept. So these are the different ideologies that have been presented, and you don't really know which one to believe, because these are things that transcend our dimension, and they go beyond our entire comprehension ability to comprehend reality. So these are dimensions. We just live in the three-dimensional world, right? So these are dimensions that are apart from the three dimensions. These are apart from the entire fabric of space and reality and time. You don't really know for sure which one to consider as the ultimate reality, right?
Hmm. So even if I take both stories at face value, right, there is one small thing which has been irking me, which is even if you take Vishnu, Vaishnava version, which is Vishnu Purana, where Vishnu comes first, it says
Hmm.
Shivalinga, the linga appeared out of nowhere, right? So it does
Yeah.
not exactly say how and what. It just says out of nowhere it came in, right? And which means it was again, it wasn't like Brahma who had to come through Vishnu, right? It was again self-manifested. Even if you take it
Yeah.
under the Shiva Purana, it still falls
Hmm.
same thing. Even over there, the answer is it's still self form manifested and not through anyone else. In both ways, is one thing consistent, but nobody can clearly say that how Shiva came to existence. That's the first thing, though. And second thing is
Hmm.
the term linga has its own conspiracy theories as well. That people have made statements about what a linga means and what it depicts. I
Hmm.
think I don't know if you agree to the same thing. Most Western media also now I notice that Indian media consider that as a phallic symbol. Linga is
Hmm.
nothing but a phallic symbol, and that's what has been worshipped. Because there are some Puranas which talks about certain stories. Again,
Hmm.
they do vary. By the way, depending on which story, they do vary. And Shiva was cursed, hence he'll be worshipped in a form of a linga. But
Hmm.
the term, the curse and the origin of linga, both in Vishnu Purana as well as Shiva Purana, they don't
Hmm.
align. The shape, okay, the only understanding is the shape, what people talk about. Maybe this is what it is. There's a couple of stories which could tie. But I don't find it conclusive that it is exactly what they're saying it is. What is your take on
Yeah.
that?
Yeah, so there's a whole lot of propaganda that's attached with this whole Shaivites versus the Vaishnavites. There's this whole battle between these two parties, wherein they say that Vishnu is superior, and the other party says that Shiva is superior, and that's where the entire division happens. And so many propagandas have been laid through this. And also you mentioned the shape of the shivling. I do have I've read somewhere that uh, the entire Kailasha temple, which has been carved out of a single rock. uh,
Uh,
the whole Yeah, the whole of Kailasha temple, which has been carved out of single rock, it's underground. Plus, get this, there's no residual rock that's been found anywhere near the
yep,
temple at all. As in, yeah, go ahead.
I've heard of that. I've heard of that though. There's no rock deposits of anything, which, as a result of waste, there is nothing to be identified anywhere nearby. Yep, I've seen
Yeah,
that.
you think that it's been carved out of a single rock, but there's no sign that the rock has been carved out, and there's no residue of that. Only thing that seems feasible to me is that the rock has been evaporated, as in it's not that it's been carved out of stone by hand. It might have been an ancient civilization, and I can connect this to a point later on. Just bear
Mhm.
with me.
Sure, sure.
An ancient, yeah, an alien who came from outer space, as an alien in this context does not mean the whole big-headed alien with big round eyes. I'm not talking about that. An alien is someone who just simply is not from the planet Earth, from the plane Earth, Bhuloka, basically, out of the
Hmm.
14 lokas. A being who is not from Bhuloka is an alien in this context. I'm talking like that. Okay. So
Okay.
a being from outside of Bhuloka came to Bhuloka and made that temple, and hence they used such an advanced technology that there's no residual rock at all found anywhere near the temple. And the whole temple, it's impossible to build a temple from top to bottom. You think that you build a temple, you build a structure from bottom to up, right? Laying the foundation and then later on stacking things on top of each other. it's
Correct.
been built upside down. It's not humanly possible, especially with the limitation of technology. Even with the technology that we have today, it's just not possible. And there's one more little sign that says uh, that indicates the shape of the shivling. I just wanted to connect this point with that as well, just taking a curved linear path here. So
Mhm.
there's a wall scripture that's depicting Shiva's shivling in an oval form, and out of that, it's been depicted as an alien vessel, as in the whole shivling. It's been depicted as a Vimana by itself, as a source of radioactive energy, as a source
Mhm.
of communication, as a means of communication. And it might have been that people of that time, when they witnessed um, this alien that I was speaking about, not from Bhuloka, that might have been the first encounter of earthly beings, Bhuloka beings from Bhuloka with Shiva himself. And they might have seen Shiva exiting out of that pod, out of that Vimana, shaped like a shivling. And that might have a scientific significance, because one more thing that I found out while searching about this is the whole shivling, the shape that we see, the curved shape that we see. It's the same shape that's used for telescopes. It's the same shape that's been used for radioactive factories. Have you
Wait, do you
noticed
have a
that?
picture of it by any chance? Do you have a reference picture that we can show here?
Not right. Not right
No
now.
problem, no
Wait, let
problem. Just
me.
checking if you had one, though. That's all. No worries. I'll look for it, though.
Yeah, not right now, but yeah, I can definitely get that for you. So the
Yep.
it's not a coincidence, right? Such a massive source of energy is, the radioactive plants cannot be coincidentally shaped just like the shivling, right? It has to
Mhm.
have some sort of scientific significance. So yeah, the whole thing where Shiva is the first being in the universe, and Vishnu is the first being in the universe. It might be an other advanced civilization which we don't really can comprehend with our minds. And yeah, exactly, this is the one that I'm talking about. The
Okay.
same shape.
Yep. Sorry, go
Yeah,
ahead.
yeah, it's a center of energy. It's sort of like, it sort of works like um harnessing an energy. I'm not able to explain it really well. So sorry for that. But yeah, it works like a center of energy. That's how I would like to put it across.
Here's a funny story, right? I was just looking into this. Someone once mentioned that a Shivalinga is always placed near a water body. It is never placed, not never. It's almost always placed near a water body, though. And even if it's not placed in a water body, there's always constant water dripping on Shivalinga, or some way there's water is involved in a way of cooling it down.
Yeah, so much energy, so much urja. You say urja in our terms. So much
Mhm.
urja, not in terms of heat, in terms of energy that it produces. That it constantly needs cooling down in its nature. And it's not really feasible if you just place a shivlinga and you just let it dry out. And that's the reason why there's a constant dripping of water, so that the shivling remains cool all throughout its entire 24 hours.
And ironically, the nuclear reactor is also placed near a water body always, and it
See, it
also
can't be
requires.
a yeah, it can't be a coincidence, right? That the two most uh, intense sources of energy constantly need water. And the new modern one that we have built, that we modern humans have built, the radioactive reactors, it can't just be constantly shaped like a shivling being thousands or lakhs of years old, even, I would argue.
Yeah. So there is this scientific American, uh, a site which talks about how to cool a nuclear reactor, and they have
Mhm.
interesting thing to say. Let me just quickly bring that up as well.
Yeah.
Right. So if you're able to see this, it currently shows
Yeah.
how to cool a nuclear reactor, and
Mm-hmm.
it talks about yeah, water is definitely, again, the reason they're placed near a water body is again for the
Mm-hmm.
very same reason. It requires water, and that is how they would end up. That means cooling water is not getting reactor cold, and hence the buildup of steam inside contained vessel. And they go on saying at how important water is
Mm-hmm.
in terms of the process. So right,
Yeah.
and we could draw parallels again. It could be overreaching. You never know. Again, depending on who you talk to, they might have a different understanding. People might think, oh, that's again overreaching. You're just trying to bring two different things just to try to justify or validate your religion. That's definitely a possibility. And another is maybe there is definitely an understanding. One thing which we need to understand is everything which is not understood at any given time is either
Mm-hmm.
considered nonsense or considered supernatural. That's how things have always been, right? We had people,
Yeah.
we had there are countries which burned down women because they were involved in medicine and other things, like they called them witches and started burning them. Not one or two, thousands of women were burned, the Salem witch trial and other things, right? Because they couldn't understand, they couldn't fathom the idea that women can learn medicine, right? To them it was not natural, right? So there is a possibility that this could be a form, like you mentioned, if you have to take the scientific route or the, you know, pseudoscience route.
Mm-hmm.
And if you just say, okay, these were all different beings from different dimension that came to the earth, and these were their weapons or these were their machines, whatnot, that's one way of
Mm-hmm.
saying, like, hey, that's an overreach. And if you have to call them as gods, creators, again, you'll have another group saying that's an overreach too, right? Because no matter which area you take, there will always be someone who would not agree with that, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So
And get this. Um, so how how we consider time travel to be possible, and like you mentioned, uh, earlier people in the previous centuries, they used to burn women because they were so afraid of things they didn't understand. And
mhm.
if you mention to a 19th or 18th century person that one day will be time traveling to the past and to the future, they would be either laughing at this idea or be so fascinated that they want to know more, or they would think that you're just messing with them, right?
Or they'll
So
burn you
how
as
about,
well. But,
yeah. Yeah, or they could burn you as well. So how is this for food for thought? The aliens that I mentioned who are not from Bhuloka, whom we consider, like I mentioned, one theory about Shiva coming out of his pod, shaped like the shivling. How about this take? How about the gods that we consider gods? They are just higher dimensional beings who have control over the elements of this universe, because they are a higher tier civilization. There are classifications of civilizations. There are different tiers that a civilization can go through of evolution, I'm talking about. How about these gods that we worship? They were so advanced with their scientific inventions that it almost seemed like magic to us. That it almost seemed like they were magical beings, and the humans of that time, they started worshiping them as gods. And occasionally they used to come to our dimension to give us blessings. And things that have happened. And Vishnu, being our primary god of worship, he takes avatars to guide us in the right path. And Vishnu, being the creator, the essential creator of the entire universe, according to Bhagavatam at least. um, I'm referring to Bhagavatam, the scripture here. What I
mhm.
believe to be true is Vishnu being at the center of the universe. And there are 14 lokas, um, 14 lokas that have come out of him, and multiverses, literal multiverses that have spawned out of him. And when he takes a breath of air in, these universes collapse into his pores. And when he takes a breath out, um, pores universes spring out of his pores. And in each of these universes, there's a there's a Vishnu of their own, and then there's a Brahma, and there's a Shiva, and there's the entire cycle of creation and destruction that happens. And these are what I essentially want to say is these are beings of higher dimensions. We are able to perceive three-dimensional space. What if these are beings who are able to perceive more than three dimensions? I would even say more than seven dimensions. This would go against all of our belief systems or whatever scientific theories that we have, and yeah, that's just food for thought.
I like that because I was an atheist for 14 years, by the way. So, which means in some manner, my brain still functions like an atheist, which means even though there are religious answers, I still tend to lean towards what if it's not true kind of motive, right?
Mm-hmm,
Not that I'm an agnostic person, but it's still your mind is programmed to think different and you go for that particular thought process. I had a theory which is similar story, but mine was more like Star Trek involved, which is what
mm-hmm,
if the gods we're referring to were nothing but people
mm-hmm,
who lived on this planet Earth? As we know, this
mm-hmm,
the world goes to the four yugas and post the
mm-hmm,
destruction. By that time, they understood terraforming different planets or different universes, and you know for a fact that the universe, as in what do you call that? At some point the star would die and the universe would come to an end, and the new universe would be
mm-hmm,
born. At this point in time, these people happen who are nothing but our ancestors or advanced civilization. They move away to a different uh, galaxy, different universe, and then
mm-hmm.
they come back every now and then just to guide us. And I know it's very far fetched. You can make a movie out of it, but I've always found that theory to be interesting. What if all of this is just my ancestor back in time who just settled in a different? My ancestors settled in different states. Why can't they settle in different universes? Right?
What you're referring to is the Kardashev scale, I believe. Different tiers of evolution for each civilization. But yeah, that's definitely an interesting theory. I prefer the old traditional Bhagavatam theory where um, Vishnu is at the center of the universe in the ocean of milk, laying on Ananta Sheshanag, who literally carries the entire weight of this universe, the 14 lokas on top of his serpent head. And I think it's nice to believe that. And what you're saying is also, I think that's an interesting theory as well. What you're referring
Yeah,
to
you
is the
can
type
make
1
movies out of
civilization.
both of those things. Yeah, both the ideas can be made movies out of. One would have one kind of following, other will have another kind of following. I'll have Star Trek and Star Wars following. You will have okay, the ideas are free, right? Anyone can pitch in any ideas. This could be a possibility, right? I mean, like no one's stopping
Yeah,
us. At least if I'm not mistaken, Hinduism never really tells that this is the only true way. Shut up and listen this, or else you would suffer somewhere. That's never the
yeah,
final statement at all. It's always go seek knowledge, go find out. If possible, go figure something out new. I don't have a problem. There is no
yeah.
restriction, which means I can speculate as much as I want without,
Hmm.
to a point where I can even think, what if this could be the case? And I could be wrong. I'm not saying I'm agree. I could be wrong, but even if I'm wrong, I still have the religious liberty to do that.
Exactly. There's no one correct answer with this. There are scriptures, there are writings, and there is also your own train of thought, and there's your belief systems. You can believe anything that you want. That's really the beauty of this entire religion, and there's no opposition to that. As in, okay, man, it's your opinion. You're cool with it. You as long as you don't force other people to believe on it, you're cool. I think that's the beauty of this entire religion. It's just not one correct answer. You can just go figure by yourself. You can read texts, you can imagine theories, and you can prove theories. So that's the beauty of this entire religion. And like you said earlier, uh, the different scales of evolution of a civilization, that can be entirely possible as well. There's no denying of this. I mean, we don't know what lays out there. There are four types of civilization, and these four range on the capability of that civilization to control their entire ecosystem. For example, we are a type 1 civilization who don't really have any control over our entire planet. And as you go up, type 1, type 2, type 3, type 4. The control just increases, the scale of control just increases. You can control your planet, and then your solar system, and then you can control your entire galaxy, and then the entire super cluster. And that's really how the entire type of civilization goes to. So that's a really, really interesting type of thought there.
Uh, yeah, like I said, there's so many interesting things, and you also mentioned another important statement. Hinduism
Hmm.
doesn't really believe in conversion, so there is no points if you get someone else converted here as well, right? So it's more like
Yeah,
if you want to stay, stay. If you want to leave, leave. I'm not going to convince you, right?
yeah,
That's the way more or less it is, right? If you think it is
live and
true
let
and if
live.
you understood,
Yeah.
yeah. So there is no that compulsion as well. So in a way, there's a lot of liberty, and yeah, that's an advantage. Like say, I was born a Hindu. I was an
Hmm.
atheist for 14 years. I understood. I went through, but the 14 years of atheism doesn't necessarily mean I haven't investigated any other religion or science per se, right? After going
Yeah.
through all of that, I still came back convinced. I came back home saying that this is what it is. End of the day, right? So I cannot explain. Even if I tell people this is what led me over here, they wouldn't believe, nor would they really care, right? Because
Hmm.
but then my problem is not my problem. My liberty over here is I don't have a need to justify to anyone why I have to believe in what I believe. I really don't, because of that kind of freedom I have. Even if you don't believe, that's fine. You can choose who you want, but this is what it is for me, kind of thing, though.
Yeah, the live and let live philosophy is just the most beautiful aspect of this entire concept of Hinduism, Sanatan Dharma. You believe what you can, and you let others believe what they can, and you let them find out on their own. If they seek guidance, you help them find guidance. So yeah, that's the beauty of this entire religion.
Yes, sir. It's funny that we were talking about Ramayana and we pivoted to so many different topics. And sadly, there are still more topics we could go to, right? But then it's like
Yeah.
we are not doing justice to Ramayana for sadly. Right? And yeah, there are so many things. For example, the shape of the linga itself. I think we should have a proper discussion only on that one particular topic. Sometimes I wonder that most of the things which we have here are not accurate, and they are being told by people and retold, and then being altered in ways where things have changed constantly. And
Yeah.
I'm doing my own research. Frankly speaking, I do my own research. I'm just slow at what I do. That's the only problem, though. Right? I
Hmm.
if we have help, that would have been better. I think we could cover more grounds, more areas.
Definitely, I'm down. I'm down for these type of things. I mean, I'm always trying to find out new things. So yeah, definitely, man.
So initially you mentioned about Lord Rama when you mentioned about Ramayana, right? You mentioned about the
Hmm.
reasons why potentially why he had to go and save Goddess Sita, and not because of traditional reasons. There were more to it.
Hmm.
You wanted to talk about the Ishkavar dynasty. Like, if I'm not mistaken, Valmiki
Hmm.
Ramayana talks about 40 different ancestors from the start till Lord Rama, right? And
Yeah.
uh, and same thing applies to even Goddess Sita. Even the Solar dynasty is the Ishkavar dynasty, and the Lunar
Hmm.
dynasty is where Goddess Sita comes from, and they have
Yeah.
described them in such detail. And would you want
Hmm.
to highlight anything from there?
Yeah, definitely. It's a huge family tree, the Ishwaku dynasty. It mainly the main characters being Dasharatha, Rama, Lakshmana, Sita, and Dasharatha having three wives, Kaikeyi, Kausalya, and Sumitra, if I'm not wrong. Yeah, Sumitra.
Mhm.
And Bharata being the son of Kaikeyi, the infamous villain, the puppet master behind the entire um, cause of Rama going to Vanvas and all. And Kausalya being the mother of Rama, and if I'm not wrong, Sumitra being the mother of Lakshmana and Shatrughna. And yeah, and Rama being the father of Love and Kush, along with Sita. And there's also Sita linked with Janaka and Sunanas. Also, many people don't know about this, but I mean, hopefully they do. I'm hoping that they do. Sita also has a sister Urmila. Many people don't know about this. They
Lakshmana's
think,
wife, if I'm not mistaken, correct?
yeah, exactly. Sita was actually adopted by Janaka, and hence the name
Mhm.
Janaki. The narrative goes in such a way that Ravana got to know that Sita would be the cause of his death, and at one point, Ravana was able to find Sita. I'm not really sure about the entire details of this, but yeah, the narrative goes in such a way that he was able to find baby Sita, just a newborn, and he was not able to kill off Sita as a baby because um, he would have gotten a really bad curse if that had happened. There was a strict policy of him that he should not kill baby female babies. And then what he did was essentially lock her up in a little wooden box, and he just uh, let her flow through the river, causing her to reach Janaka. And one day, just Janaka just finds out about Sita, and he decides to adopt her, and hence she got the name Janaka Putri Janaki. So that's where the
Mhm.
entire narrative of her being the daughter of the land comes up from. And yeah, also unpopular opinion, Ravana was not the only son. Ravana, of course, he had brothers. Everyone knows about this. Ravana, Vibhishan, Kumbhakaran, and Shurpanaka, and they were
Mhm.
the children of Vishrava and Kaikesi. Kaikesi, many people just get confused with Kaikeyi because of the names being similar, but
Mhm.
Vishrava was a rishi, and yeah, Kaikesi, I'm not sure if she
She was
was.
a Asura, if I'm not mistaken. She was from Asura
Yeah,
clan, though, because
yeah,
he was the father was a sage and wife was an Asura clan.
exactly. Yeah, I'm not sure if she was an Asura or a Danava. That's where I'm doubtful. Maybe she was an Asura, I think, right?
My understanding is that father was a Brahmana, a rishi, and which is
Uh-huh.
the a noble person, and then because they also have their noble gurus, right? Like for example,
Yeah.
what's his name? The one with the Mahamrityunjaya mantra, I
Uh,
forgot his name actually. So
Durvasa.
yeah, no, not Durvasa. So they have this the sage who takes care of all the suras and rakshasas as well. So when they die, he brought them back to life. That was the mantra I was looking for, but that was not given to him. Maybe he had
Uh,
that mantra. Something there's a story. I almost forgot about it. I can look for it
I,
though.
I think it was Shukracharya, if I'm not wrong.
Shukracharya. Yep. Yes, sir. Shukracharya.
Yeah,
He was the
exactly. Yeah,
guru for the
got
Asura.
him. Yeah, got him confused with the other one. Yeah, so there's Ravana's whole family as well. There's Ravana along with Mandodari, and their son Meghnad and Akshay Kumar. Akshay Kumara is not a name that many people are familiar with because he's the less popular of the entire family. But yeah, Meghnad, of course, everyone knows about Meghnad and how he fought in the battle against Rama, and how he gave up his life. And he was also known as Indrajit for conquering Indra. Such great prowess in each and one of them. It's amazing as to how many great beings were at that time. Not to mention Ravana being such a great practitioner of the arts. Man, it was awesome.
Yeah. Yeah, I've also heard that he was very talented with music, arts, and he was also knowledgeable with medicine. And what do you call that? Medicines for animal. He was really well versed with those things. He even wrote books about it.
Exactly. So many. He was so knowledgeable that they actually have temples in his name in the southern part of India, even in Lanka. They have temples in his name. Even in South India, there are temples in Ravana's name. They literally worship Ravana for how great he was, how knowledgeable he was, and
Hmm.
yeah, that's I think amazing. Such a great, such a great saint, such a great person. had had to step on that last, had to ignite that last flame, that the last nail on his coffin that led to his death. He could have been a great king.
Okay, I think I have the info. So, remember we had this discussion earlier regarding when the language thing came in. Pulastya
Yeah.
was father of Agastya, right? So Pulastya was
Huh?
the famous Rishi. His son was
Mm-hmm.
Vishrava, and
Mm-hmm.
Rishi Vishrava, Rishi Bharadwaj, uh, married his daughter to Rishi Vishrava, which
Mm-hmm.
happens to be their union. And out of that, the son was born, and the son was called Vishravan, who was born.
Uh-huh.
And Vishravan was also known as Kuber.
Yeah.
So Kuber was the
This.
actual. He was the actual, the king of Lanka before Ravana took over, right?
Yeah, Ravana just banished Kubera out of his entire landscape, and then Kubera went to help towards the other gods, and then the whole issue happened with Kubera and Ravana, the infamous story.
And here's the thing, right? So over here it says, before Kuber came there, Lanka had been inhabited by the Rakshasa tribe. So until Kubera, who was
Hmm.
nothing but who was in the form of the rishis, in the noble lines as human or rishi, in that form, that line is where he comes in. So until then, Lanka was inhabited by a Rakshasa tribe, and they were present, but Kuber made it famous. So they wanted the position back, and seeing the prosperity return to the place, many of the Rakshasa tribe returned to settle there happily. One of the kings of the Rakshasa was Sukesh. He
Hmm.
had three sons, namely
Hmm.
Malyavan, Sumali, and Mali. Sumali
Hmm.
had a daughter named Kaikasi, or Kaikeshi. How do you
Yeah,
pronounce it?
Kaikisi.
Kaikesi. And Kaikesi was extremely repellent lady, so which is nothing but so here, so she comes from the Asura clan, Rakshasa clan, sorry, not Asura, Rakshasa clan. She comes from.
Mhm. Yeah,
So the father comes from the Rishi clan, daughter comes from Rakshasa clan, and hence Ravana also becomes the Rakshasa.
exactly. Yeah, that's what I had a doubt about, if she was a Rakshasa or a Danava or an Asura.
Like yeah, I actually got my info from this famous author called Ami Ganatra.
Yeah,
So she
Amiganatra,
wrote
I've
the
heard
book.
of her.
Yeah, so she wrote this book called Ramayana Unraveled, right? So
Yeah.
she's made so much details about these things. In fact, the thing which I just shared right now were actually from that book. She has highlighted Ravana's, family. What do you call it? Vamshavali, Sita's Vamshavali, Rama's Vamshavali, and all those things. And it was easy for me to just pull up and say who was who from just the narration over here.
Yeah, his their entire lineage is mentioned in that book. It's quite awesome.
Yes, sir. So coming to Ramayana again, there are seven
Yeah.
books or there are six books. What does yours stand? How many books do we have? And do you consider the Uttarakhanda as an actual book, or do you not consider them as an actual book?
Yeah, according to me, Ramayana ends at Yuddhakanda. The entire army, of Rama wins the battle against Ravana, and then Rama slays Ravana. And Yuddhakanda is essentially, for me, in my personal opinion, is the conclusion of Ramayana. And Uttarakhanda was later added into the Ramayana. The reason I state this is because when I was surfing for information on this, I found out that there's a thing called as Palakriti at the end of each book. It
Mhm.
just states that Phala means um, what you gain by reading this book. At the start of the book, there's the Palakriti, which says what you will gain after reading this book, and at the end of the book, there's this thing Palakriti, where it says what you have gained after reading the book. The Palakriti is after the end of Yuddhakanda, which leads me to believe that Yuddhakanda is literally the end of Ramayana, but the Uttarakanda is still a continuation. After that, I believe that it's an unnecessary drag, and it was driven by propaganda, mainly in the time of Shankaracharya. The reason I
Mhm.
state this is because the level of Sanskrit that's been used over there it is shockingly similar to the level of Sanskrit that's been used at the time of Shankaracharya, when he was around, when he was projecting his whole ideology towards society. And I believe, in my personal opinion, that Uttarakanda was added at that point of time. And there are so many stories within Uttarakanda where it contradicts the entire narrative of Ramayana, and it does not really match the entire flow of Ramayana. The reason why I state this, so for example, some of these stories, Sita was banished. So at the end of Yuddhakanda, Sita and Rama are united after the entire long battle of Rama versus Ravana. Sita and Rama are united, but in Uttarakanda, Sita and Ram are divided because the people of Ayodhya start doubting the character of Sita because she has spent so many days in captivity. There's one more argument wherein the people, the whole story of the Agni Pariksha that Sita gives at the end of Yuddhakanda to prove herself to Rama,
Mm-hmm.
and Rama purposely provokes Sita to give this Agni Pariksha. Again, Rama never asks, contradicting the popular belief that people think that Rama asked Sita to give the Agni Pariksha. Rama never asked Sita to give the Agni Pariksha. Sita voluntarily gives the Agni Pariksha. Rama just provokes her into thinking that she is not pure and she is supposed to give this Agni Pariksha so that she can demolish her tarnished image in front of the public of his Ram Raja. And after giving that Agni Pariksha, it pretty much solves the entire issue that Sita was the entire time the pure soul that she is. It proves the entire theory. But in Uttarakhanda, it's really doubted again and unnecessarily doubted again. And the people of Ayodhya start talking that Sita, how can a king of such a great kingdom keep a wife like Sita? And they started really damaging Sita's image at that point. And then Rama, because he had to protect the interests of the people, he had to ultimately banish Sita out of the kingdom. And then that's when, um, and that too, a pregnant Sita at that time, he had to banish her at that time when she was pregnant. And after that takes place Love Kush and the entire narrative of those two kids of Rama. And there's one more tale of Shambhuk Shudra. I'm sure you've heard of that. Shambhuk Shudra
Yes, sir.
being, yeah,
Well,
being
before
the
we go to
only,
the that particular topic, I just want
yeah,
to go back to this one over here. See, you mentioned in the Yuddha Kanda that it ends. The test was already done, and once the test was
yeah,
done, it was supposed to end like happily ever after. And everyone who, the entire idea why Lord Rama wanted her to prove this is because for the people, because as people often misunderstand that it's not a
mm-hmm,
personal thing. As a ruler of a region, he's
mm-hmm,
entitled to put his Rajya Dharma ahead of anything else,
yeah,
which is exactly what he did for his father as well when he left. It was again his dharma which was in question, so he had to leave, right?
yeah,
So he could have stayed the first time as well, but since dharma was the reason, he left. And since he had to also prove the dharma there, right, he also made that that particular discussion happen, and that resulted in an outcome which satisfied everyone's
mm-hmm,
questions and everyone needs, they're all taken care of. So the same
yeah,
test happening the second time or the third time does
mm-hmm,
not make sense. I mean, also it does not make sense, right? I mean, the same thing happens
yeah,
again in this thing. That's one problem I had with. Second, we've clearly established Lord Rama's intent was always about Rajya Dharma and something which is in benefit of the people and this country.
mm-hmm,
If we're talking about Rajadharma, one of the primary essence of Rajadharma, or anything for that matter, is the heir to the throne. That is very important, as a
yeah,
successor has to be in place. It does not make
mm-hmm,
sense for Lord Rama to send his pregnant wife away again, because she was having his kids. Even if he had that in question at that point of time, they were still heir to
mm-hmm,
the throne as per the Rajadharma at that point of time. And
yeah,
if he had chosen that, like, no, she is not I mean, those kids are not mine, then for
mm-hmm,
his Rajdhamma, he was supposed to marry again to have an heir
mm-hmm,
in place, which also was not done there, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
clearly, there was no motive, there was no reason for him, or there was not the reason, there was no intent for him to have anyone else replacing, or nor was there a plan to have a successor in place. So that's kind of, you know, where I had confused. Like, for me, Uttarakhand does not make sense because of these things. These are the things which is not a happy ending story, nor does it go hand in hand with the entire dharma which has been projected from the start, where it takes a deviation.
Yeah, exactly. And at the end, ultimately, Kush is the one who becomes the successor of Ram after Ram leaves the Bhuloka.
Hmm.
Kush is the one. Kush, since he is the elder son amongst Love and Kush, ultimately he is the one uh, who's the heir to Rama's Ram Rajya. But then that does not make any sense because he, yeah, again, like you mentioned, he banished their mother, and again now he is ready to accept the children of a banished mother. It does not really make sense.
Yeah, that's where a lot of inconsistency comes in, and that's when I was under the impression maybe again, Uttarakhand is still a debated subject. People still argue if it's
Yeah,
valid or not, and the contents. I think the next topic you're going to talk about is another controversial discussion. Is this the right thing to do or wrong thing to do? That's another controversial discussion itself, though. But
yeah,
this is the reason why people argue, because Uttarakhand in itself has so many flaws which was never there from the start. The six books never had any of these flaws. How come the seventh book have so many flaws? And also, how come the seventh book is different from how the six books actually come from? So it doesn't even sound like it's from Maharishi Valmiki. It maybe comes from someone who later tried to alter it for a certain narrative.
yeah. I do. Yeah, I do definitely agree with that. I think it was mainly propaganda, as in, earlier mentioned the whole Shaivites versus Vaishnavites. This might
Hmm.
have been an attempt at tarnishing the image of the entire epic of Ramayana, just to propose another ideology, just to propose another theory at that time, at that point of time. But again, we no one really knows for sure what had happened.
Correct. Now let's talk about the most interesting discussion that you wanted to talk about.
Yeah,
Shambhukavadana, right?
yeah,
Shambhukavada.
Shambhuk Shudra, the unfortunate soul who had to who give up his life because another soul died. So the entire narrative goes in such a way that uh, after Ram became the king, the whole Ram Rajya was established, and the people were living in such a great harmony that there was no death for hundreds of years. No one even died in the kingdom of Ram. Everyone just lived forever with great health. But then one day, suddenly, in his kingdom, um, there was a death of a boy, and the parents of that boy, they just brought they were shocked at first. They were shocked as to why this boy died of sickness, but then they just went ahead and took his body to Lord Ram, and then they just questioned him as to, in your watch, in your Ram Raja, there was not supposed to be any death. Why is my son dead now? I want you to uh, give me back my son's life, and I want it now. And when these demands were made, Ram was shocked as to why this happened. Upon investigation, there's a whole long story to this, but long story short, when they investigated this whole thing, they came to the conclusion that Shudra, a person who engages in the lower trades, according to the Varna system, he a person of the working class was an active shudra while also being practicing the practices of a brahman. So that's where the issue started, and that was really counted in account of adharma. And because of that adharma, Ram Raju was the whole concept of Ram Raju, where there's no death and there's eternal life. There's a really long life that just came to an end because of that one adharma that he made, and because Rama was unable to console the parents of this boy who had died of sickness. He ultimately had to lean in towards his Rajadharma, and he had to cut off the head of Shambhuk Shudra. Again, this is a story which might not be true at all, or this might not be the reality, but no one knows for sure as to what happened. This, considering that this is a later edition of Ramayana, and this entirely contradicts the idea of Ram Rajya and the whole happily ever after narrative of Ramayana. But yeah, I don't think that it's worth too much of a debate. But yeah, that's just what I think.
Sorry, I was on mute. So essentially, what the outcome or the final discussion is that caste system was involved somehow during the time of Ramayana, which means they tie this to Hinduism. The caste system was a Hinduism problem, and
Yeah,
it's been there since Ramayana, is what the agenda is.
yeah, exactly. Just a way to project an agenda, which I don't think that I'm clear with what agenda is being proposed here, with so many inconsistencies with the entire Uttarakhand story. But yeah, there was certainly an intention behind these stories, tarnishing the image.
So I think one of these lines from Valmiki's Ramayana itself,
Hmm.
where he talks about caste, but it's not in the
Hmm.
same way how it's being projected in Uttarakanda. No? So I think this is somewhere in the Balakanda, I guess, though. So when
Uh-huh.
King Dasharatha asked to bring people of all Varna, again, we need to differentiate what Varna and caste are. Varnashrama
Yeah,
Dharma, Varna was uh, a, 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 what is the actual term to use here? It's more of a way to differentiate what the occupation was, and based on the occupation, they had this uh, title assigned that these people do this particular job, and this what they were. It's pretty similar to what we have like modern world as well. We have the stone masons, we have others as well, right? People who've done a certain job, they pass on that
uh-huh.
knowledge to their kids, and it continues the family business, right? So
Yeah.
we're not going to blame Ambani's because they're in the family business of making money. It's a caste system, or the Tatas for that matter, right? It's been the same thing everywhere. But why Hinduism takes a hit apart from other places? Because we've had some issues somewhere. But the question is, I think this is one thing which I want to discuss. Does Hinduism really have a caste system problem? Or did the people of that point of time had a problem? That's a huge difference to make, right? Anyone
Yeah.
who gets a chance to make any changes with any power given to them, they are bound to make some alterations. If I was given a chance today to make some policy changes, I would ensure that my family is taken care, in a way, more or less.
Yeah.
Right. So I'm not, but you can't blame India or Hinduism for that, whatever changes happen. So I think that's one thing which we may have to discuss someday, that Hinduism never really had a caste system problem. It's more like a later addition, especially the Brits who came in and they wanted to drive us apart. That's a
Yeah.
common idea people have. But yeah, in Valmiki's Ramayana, when the King Dasharatha talks about these things, he says how to get them respectfully. People of all Varnas should be brought to the wedding or to the coronation, when was taken, with proper due
Mhm.
diligence and proper respect, right?
Yeah.
So if there was differentiation as a claim, or if there were any kind of discrimination, then those statements in the first book wouldn't make sense.
Exactly, I do agree with you on that. And the whole premise as to why we have so many castes and caste systems and differences between these castes and religions, uh, I think it just stems from a root where people misunderstood what the Varna system stood for. And yeah, like you stated, influences from the British were heavy on this. They wanted to divide us, and hence they, just put ghee on fire where they just created the caste system, and then different rules for different castes, and we just ended up creating this whole mess. And at earlier times, even during the Mahabharata times, even during Ramayana times, the Varna system was just solely based on the occupation, as in it was not necessary that a Brahmin's son should be a Brahmin. It can be a case wherein a Brahmin's son could be a Vaishnava, or a
Yeah.
Brahmin's son, if he decides to go and join the army, he can be a Kshatriya. It was based on,
Vishwamitra, for example, right? Maharishi
yeah,
Vishwamitra was a Kshatriya who turned to be a Brahmin later on.
exactly. It was just based on the occupation, and at some point of time, we just tipped the scales, and we just misunderstood the whole purpose of the Varna system, and we just personalized it to our own caste system, and decided to divide people on the basis of that, and that's where the downfall of society began. Honestly,
Yes. The reason why I don't believe this was a religion thing, because initially, even if you go by the Varnashrama Dharma, it only
uh-huh.
talks about Brahmana, Kshatriya, Vaishya, and Shudra. Only four were mentioned. The
Yeah,
untouchability class was never really there, even in those things. The untouchability comes later on, which is, the 18th century, 16th, 17th, 18th century when untouchability comes in, right?
yeah,
Until then, that was not even there. Even if they have to say the Shudras were the untouchables, which is not, because Shudras were, people who did regular work like metallurgy, agriculture, trades, and craft, right?
yeah,
And so they cannot be untouchable, because the description of untouchable is nothing but people who were involved in certain activities which were not deemed clean by everyone. Like for
yeah.
example, Chandala. I had a debate with one person, what a
Hmm.
Chandala is, and how the discrimination happens. So Chandala is essentially a person who's an undertaker in a graveyard. He takes care of bodies. He stays there in the graveyard, and he pretty much lives, eats, and spends his time there. Right
Yeah,
now, people treated him as an untouchable, because most people would find him untouchable. Then I asked a question. See, you during Corona, most of you wouldn't have shook hands with me or anything at that point of time. You would have stayed away from me. You wouldn't. I would have pretty much have been an untouchable because of the worry of germs,
yeah.
right? And we spoke of how advanced Hindu civilization or Indian civilization was back then, where we're talking about these advanced weapons and all those things. Clearly, they would have had some idea about how germs are spread, how disease can get spread, and people. For example, even if I'm not taking a side, see, I personally am not a Brahmin, so which means I can easily say this, right? Uh,
Hmm.
out of all of these groups, the Brahmins had a different role, which means they had to take shower every single day before they start their day. That was a compulsory requirement. That the rituals require these many steps, right?
Yeah.
The rituals require these many activities that has to be done, which pretty much keeps them pure in their own way. Whereas the others, for Kshatriyas, for example, they could hunt, right? When they
Hmm.
hunt, when there's blood or there's anything on dirt or whatnot, that also makes them impure. So they'll have to clean themselves before they entered any place, especially holy place or religious place. So this distinction of how people should be clean was
Hmm.
now what we call hygiene was pretty much there back then as well, right? And
Yeah.
taking from the same angle, someone who spends the time in the graveyard, spending time with the dead bodies. Again, we're talking about either burning or burying them. Still, we're talking about
Hmm.
dead bodies and how long it's been there. They would have had the idea that, okay, this person has spent time, so I may not want to shake hands with this person. It's a possibility. Let's just assume, let's just go crazy over here, right? That
Hmm.
benefit of doubt has to be given to that other side. Why? Because uh, we did this in 2020. 2020,
Yeah.
we stayed away from people. Everyone was untouchable in 2020. I know again
Hmm.
people might say this is overreaching. Like, you guys are just defending Brahmins. Like, I don't have to defend. I'm not a Brahmin myself. So I don't have to defend Brahmins. To me, there's this confusion. It doesn't make sense, because the religion from the start talks about cleanliness, rituals, and hygiene. So that is where I would put my faith more than the 18th century, the Brits who came in and made a difference in our scriptures, though.
Yeah, I do agree with you on that. So the whole concept of untouchability, like you stated, the untouchability that we saw in recent times, wherein you're not supposed to touch people of certain castes, or certain creeds, that almost relates to the time wherein trade started coming to India, as in thus, the people from other countries first sailed onto India and they
Hmm.
started trading spices with us. And that's when it's almost coincidental that, not coincidental that untouchability started right then. But yeah, in ancient times, there was the concept of hygiene. They had tremendous medical knowledge, they had tremendous Ayurvedic knowledge. So many books have been written on medicine. Of course, they would have had knowledge on this. And even today, Brahmins have the entire procedure of where they're not supposed to touch anyone who has not had a bath. So, like you mentioned earlier, a Brahmin has to have a bath every day before doing puja in order to be pure for the god that he's worshipping to. Even today, the whole tradition is carried forward, wherein a Brahmin, he has a bath every day before doing puja,
Hmm.
and until and unless the whole ritual of the puja is completed, he's not supposed to touch another person who has not had a bath. So that's just a basic concept of maintaining purity for the god or goddess that you're worshipping. That has nothing to do with the caste that a person belongs to, but the person who works in the graveyard, they surely did have a lot of knowledge as to how a dead person can bring germs to them. And yeah, the benefit of the doubt can be given to them, given to other people for not touching that kind of a person. But if you look at ancient civilizations, they were not ordinary people who were just just lack for a better word, chandalas, right? They were
Hmm.
just not ordinary people who used to do that. They were people who were having knowledge about how to handle dead bodies, that used to handle the dead bodies. And if you look at Egyptian times and other civilizations such as the Mesopotamian era, they had so much knowledge on how to preserve the dead body, that without the awareness of how the germs, of what kind of germs are present within the dead body and how to preserve it, how to protect it from rotting away, they had to apply medicine on the entire body in such an effective manner that mummies, we can literally find mummies even today that are in perfect mint condition, apart from the muscle degradation of a dead body. They have till date not rotted. Of course, this wouldn't be possible without the knowledge of how what kind of germs exist in the dead body, and how those germs will react, and what kind of medicines are to be applied onto the body to counteract those germs to protect the body from rotting away. So they had tremendous knowledge. Yeah, I would agree with that.
All right. So yeah, I think this is yeah, this is pretty much what the problem was. Give me 1 second here.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I think caste system itself requires a more uh, in-depth discussion. I think it's only fair that we make this, and the reason why I say this is because the entire Western world is looking at India and looking at us as backward thinking people, and
Yeah.
this has nothing to do with Hinduism, nothing to do with what caste you're from or what not, right? To me, the fact of the matter remains same. Someone is going to be talking bad about my country, and I am doing nothing to defend it. There is some random person who has no knowledge of what's happening is actually
Mm-hmm.
telling this country is backward. They are just they just get involved in caste and other things, and these people are illiterates. Now, what am I doing? Either I'm fueling into the same thing. I'm like, yeah, of course, my caste is the best caste. I can either do that, or I can actually
Mm-hmm.
clarify, not just to the outsiders, at least to the inside people over here, to say we are not as backward as what people want us to be or claim that we are. We've always been a far more intelligent as well as advanced civilization compared to most
Mm-hmm.
other civilizations. Right? We've excelled in art, we've excelled in culture, we've excelled in tradition, we've excelled in music, we've excelled in education, math, science, astrology, astronomy. Name physics, name whatever you want. We've already done all of those things, and for some reason we are still a backward third class or third world country. How is that possible? Because we don't take an effort as Indians to make our country look better. And how do we do that? First, we'll have to clean one thing at a time. Like we had a discussion initially, people don't care about their languages either, right? For me, it's like anyone who's born in a certain place, they have their mother tongue,
Mm-hmm.
and that becomes a primary requirement. They have to take care of that. And if they're from a different language and they're born in this state as well, again they have
Mm-hmm.
a requirement to take care of that language too. Like the
Yeah.
mother language, the state language, would become a primary. As much as you have your own mother tongue, you are responsible to take care of it. Right? Even if you don't want to go spread out, that's I'm not asking you to go and give pamphlets and ask them to read this language or go beat people up. No, you should at least put that effort to communicate in that language as much as the other. You can't expect people to
Yeah.
come talk to you the language. You need to put that effort first and foremost, right?
Yeah.
And that's how you start, one step at a time. Then you defend your religion, defend other things, and you don't have to defend the wrong thing. If it's wrong, let's agree. Let's just say it's wrong. Yeah, we one mistake anymore. There's 1,000 things we did better. One mistake is not going to make my country look any weak or my religion look any weak. That's the
Yeah.
understand. People too defensive. Like I can, my religion has to be perfect. My language has to be perfect. My country has to be perfect. Not required, frankly, though, because I can, for every mistake, I can show country with thousands of mistakes, and they are proudly, raising their chest and puffing it up and standing and saying, like, we are better than you guys. And why not? Why shouldn't we do the same?
Definitely. I think it's just a case of bad promotion. We have just been such bad promoters of our own religion that the entire outside world does not know about the depths of our entire culture, our tradition, our heritage. If we would have done a better job at projecting ourselves towards the entire world, then yeah, definitely I would say that there would be more fans of this religion, for lack of better term. There would be more followers of this Sanatan Dharma that we are so fond of. And yeah, it's just a case of bad promotion.
Yeah. And here's the thing, right? So we spoke for 2 hours. Roughly, it's been 2 hours right now, and we couldn't get past the first. We didn't even do an in-depth, dive of the books, though. We just scraped to the overall how many books we had, just a summary of how many books, and we took two
Yeah,
hours. Imagine going in depth of every single book. It'll take forever, though, and I think that's how complicated it is. Not just just 1 15 minute discussion and say, like, Hinduism is sorted, everyone, this is what it is. There's no way though. And that's just one book, by the way. We're talking about just Ramayana. There are still so many books,
yeah,
and if we have to go to the Puranas, the Vedas, the Upanishads, there's so many things which we haven't even, Bhagavad Gita or Mahabharata, so many things which we haven't even touched yet though. And I think it's time that there has to be a renaissance way where people start paying attention to their own culture. People start paying attention to what they need to do. Their part of the contribution has to be done, and not just let hope someone else takes care of something, and then sit home and complain, like, why are these guys talking bad about us? Those kind of things has to stop.
yeah,
People have to take actions in their own hands. When I say actions, like me being an atheist for 14 years, I had to come here not just to defend my religion, but primarily to defend my country, because I know for a fact that there's a cultural degradation going on at this point. And uh, over here, you need to observe that after a certain point, people would not have a clue of what's happening, right? What religion, what culture, what traditions, all of those things would be disappear more or less. And culture and traditions are ultimate, and the ties not just to the religion, not just to the land, but your region, your language, everything. All of those things that keeping India intact is it's our culture and traditions. And
yeah,
wanted to end with that note. I think hopefully we get to do a few more of those things. I would just want to end with this note that we need to be involved more in ourselves and our traditions, and bring those out. Anything you
yeah.
want to say? Your closing statement.
Uh, Not much. I think you've pretty much covered it, and we have just scratched the surface. There's so much more to be said about this, and so many more topics that it's practically infinite. So many
Yes, sir.
damn topics that we can do.
Yes, sir. So I think that's it for today. Hopefully we connect again with part two and a part three. I think that we need to do more. And until then,
Yeah,
thank you, Shashank. And it's been nice talking to
you
you. so many interesting
You
things
are
you've
welcome.
shared today. So,
You are welcome.
um, all right, thank
And
you, and
thank you.
yes, sir. Yep.
Yes,
Take care then.
thank you. You too.
Yep. Thanks. Bye bye.
Yeah. Bye bye.